Hello everyone, welcome back to Eurofever Garage. As always, I'm your host Donovan, and Merry Christmas to you. Or, if by the time you're watching this, Happy New Year, welcome to 2025. If you're new to the channel, welcome in. As the name suggests, we are automotive enthusiasts, casual and hardcore alike, anyone in between, really focusing on automotive lifestyle, hobbies, enthusiasts alike. We focus on a lot of DIYs, we have a lot of projects on this channel, events we like to go to, and just again news in general and videos like this where we have more of a discussion style, talking about things that interest us in the world of automotive. So if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. As I mentioned, this video will be launched in 2025. It'll be the first video of the year, and so if you are very chronically online looking for a project like myself, that number 25 is probably pretty ingrained in your head. If not, and you're unsure why I keep saying 25, no, I'm not talking about the age that Leonardo DiCaprio does not date women above. I'm talking about the 25-year import rule. There's a great video by Alex Martini, if you haven't seen it already. He talked about it in a recent video about K-cars, some legislation changes on legal definitions and having a car actually imported into the States, more specifically certain states not allowing them anymore. Long story short, back in the 80s and 90s, 60s to 80s, there was a golden age of gray market vehicles. Gray market vehicles meaning cars that were imported to the U.S. that had a U.S. equivalent, but were not purchased directly from the U.S. branch. Some of the largest offenders of these were Mercedes buyers, Porsches, even Ferraris to a certain extent, Volkswagen. Generally speaking, a lot of European cars, because we did get a lot of them. We just had certain options. More importantly, it was restrictions and regulations that didn't allow a lot of these cars to come over. So it is now 2025. And if you were like me, or you're like Stella, you turned 25 this year. So with that being said, I thought it'd be a fun idea to talk about some of my top cars that are turning 25 this year for import into the US. If you're in Canada, you're lucky and you only have to wait 15 years. So you can actually start importing cars that are 2010 and older. So that's pretty cool. And I'll make some notes and whatnot throughout this video on specifics and stuff like that. But again, if you haven't already, go check out Alex's video for a more in-depth explanation of that 25-year law. I think he has a great explanation of it. With that being said, we're going to get into my list. There's no particular order in this. It's just what came to my head at that time. In any case, let's just get started. First on my list is going to be the second generation of the Toyota Century, the one and only Japanese V12, the Japanese Rolls Royce, if you will. This is a phenomenal car, and that's first on my list. Technically, you could have imported these as early as 2022 in the US. I believe the first year they made them was 97. But if you want a final year, or I guess a 2000 model year, you could get them as of now in the States. So I have been seeing a few of them pop up here in the US already. Again, 97 models. But as we're getting to the 2000 model years and the final years, it's really cool to see these starting to pop up. I'm really excited to see these come at car shows. Me being a big body owner myself, would love to own one day. A really good example of someone who picked one up recently, if you are familiar with Throttle House, James has one on that channel, and they actually just bought two other big body cars, one of which is on this list later on.
You didn't buy an EV.
No.
Instead, you imported a 5,000-pound, 17-foot-long V12 JDM luxury sedan.
Yeah.
Moving on, wanted to switch gears a little bit here to European side of things. Again, being a European focused channel, wanted to start with BMW. This one's a little bit of a funky one. I'm a big fan of the E46 chassis, but we never got this here, the E46 Compact. So this is a funny looking little hatchback that has the rounded headlight eyes, valence cover on the eyes. I believe Auto Alex did a video on them a couple years ago where they made it, I forget what the style is, but the Japanese style of very flamboyant, very brash styling with the exhausts, the body kit. It was very, very funny video. It's just a funny car. I think the last hatchback we got from BMW of that time was the E36 318 Ti, but E46s are better in my opinion. They're a little bit more modern and certainly a good product of its time. So definitely a fun one that I hope to see here soon. Up next is a car that is very near and dear to my heart. I mentioned it earlier in this video, and that is the BMW E38. This is specifically to a couple trims that we didn't get here in the States. So while we could get the Alpina versions of these cars, we couldn't get the short wheelbase. And so what I'm talking about here is the E38 750i short wheelbase. Pretty much all of Europe got these mostly as standard. You actually had to option for the long wheelbase, whereas in the States, the only short wheelbase you could get was the 740, sporty shorty as we like to call it here, if you optioned it that way. So 750 short wheelbase, what does that really get you? If you are importing it from the US, if you're importing it from Europe, you actually get a lot of options as standard. Mainly the rear vanity mirrors behind the headrests. You get the lunch tables. I think you had to option the armrest lunch tables. I don't think that was standard. I think that was an option. But you could have the center multimedia interface for the radio controls, the heated seat controls, a second telephone, as well as movement of the passenger seat. So, if you wanted more room, you could move that forward. So you had the most leg room possible. Some other notable options on that were the champagne cooler, the fax machine, as well as the rear-mounted TV monitor. Very rare options, but those were also pretty notable in Europe in particular. Moving on to the Alpina version of things, again, going to the short wheelbase, we have the Alpina B12 5.7 or the 6-liter, the coveted 6-liter. So these ran from 95 to 2001. We're getting into the facelifts now with the sort of rounded valence as well instead of the straight headlight on the pre-facelift 7 Series. So really excited to see these here. That's actually the top of my list in terms of like what I would actually import. But I've talked about it enough. Let's move on to the next one. Moving on to Mercedes. So I'm a big fan of wagons. A lot of enthusiasts are. Specifically here, I wanted to talk about the W202, or I think called the S202 C43 wagon. So this is the final year that you could buy them, the 2000 model year. This has the 4.3 liter V8, just over 300 horsepower, a little bit of suspension, obviously bodywork, and I think the widening of the arches. But again, the wagon. So you get a little bit extra space, it's practical, and honestly, pretty decent looking car. If you've seen the video from Top Dead Center or Two Dead Center, they posted Edwin's personal vehicle that he just bought, the C55. So that is the bigger version of this engine, the 5.5 liter. But I really like this version of it because it's a little bit more tame, but you're getting a lot of sport-oriented feeling, sport-oriented luxury, if that makes sense. It's a really interesting car, and it's a wagon. Can't beat that. Moving on over to Audi. So we got a couple things here. The Audi A3, more specifically the S3. As far as I know, I haven't seen any S3s here in the States of this time frame. This ran from 1996 to 2003. Obviously, Golfs are really cool, and they sold really, really well here in the States, but we didn't get the Audi equivalent of that, or the S3, which is the inline four, about 225 horsepower. I'm pretty sure you could get a manual in Europe. That was pretty common in those times. So again, front wheel drive or all wheel drive, 225 horsepower manual Audi hatchback. That's a pretty good recipe. And I really would like to see those coming here in the States here. Even if it's just an A3, it's still a cool little car. So moving on, we're going to something that's a little bit Italian, a little bit of German. And if you haven't figured that out already, no, it's not a Lamborghini. It is the Pagani Zonda, the C12. I'm not sure about you guys, but growing up, I thought this was the freaking coolest car. I mean, I think my first car that I thought was like poster worthy for me was obviously the Diablo. The Lamborghini Diablo is on my wall back at my parents' house. That was just the coolest car for me until I saw this, and that was the Pagani Zonda. The only game I really remember it in that I played pretty frequently was Need for Speed Pro Street. I absolutely loved it on that. I would always use it as a grip car. Such a freaking cool car. It's like a watch on wheels. And I think that gets thrown around quite a bit, but it's so intricate. It's beautiful. It sounds great. That I want to say it started with the 6-liter V12 and then later got bored out to the 7.3. I'll put some notes here, but having a V12, that starter noise. I'm actually going to put a clip here of the exhaust note of Horatio Pagani himself racing one of these things. Phenomenal. So I'll just place that here. Give that a quick listen because it's orgasmic. So, a pretty sad step down for these next couple of cars. We're going to talk about the Seat Leon. I believe it's pronounced Seat. I apologize for the mispronunciation, but the Seat Leon, the Gulf-based Spanish brand. Sorry, the Spanish brand with the Gulf-based Leon. That was a pretty interesting car. Again, hatchback, very simple product of its time. A lot of fuel-efficient cars that were hatchbacks were very, very popular in Europe at this time. We don't have Seat here in the States, and it would be really awesome to see one here because there's a lot of carryover to the Volkswagen Audi group. Next is a couple of other Italian cars from Fiat. So we've got the Fiat Punto. This is the Mark II. This ran for quite some time, actually, 1999 to 2010. There's a lot of iterations there I'm not going to get into here today, but again, 2000 was the second model year of the car. Same thing as the Seat, fuel efficient, front wheel drive, manual, hatchback from Europe. But this next one, the Fiat Coupe, slightly different. This is another car from Car Throttle that I really enjoyed watching with Alex from Auto Alex now. I really, really liked the blue Fiat Coupe that they did. Designed by Pininfarina, turbocharged inline 5. Sounds freaking orgasmic. Again, I'm going to put another clip here. I think it just sounds so cool. We just don't make cars like this anymore. So while this isn't the greatest car of all time, I think it's definitely had a good cult following, which actually leads me to my next car, and we're actually going to switch back to France for the final car, and that is the Renault Clio, the V6. So this ran from 98 to 2005. You had the 3-liter V6 that put out about 230 horsepower, 225 horsepower. Absolutely wide, chunky boy. I mean, taking, again, a very boring, economical, like run-of-the-mill car and then throwing a big V6 in it in the back. That's crazy. That's some, I don't even know who would actually make that, but the fact that it came from France is pretty freaking cool. And these things are starting to go up in value, and it's a really interesting car to say the least. So I hope we see these quite soon. But moving to Japan, this is where this kind of all started. We know him, we love him. Rest in peace, Paul Walker. Absolutely insane collection. And one of the reasons why I'm making this video today is the Nissan Skyline, the R34, Mr. Godzilla himself. These cars are becoming 25 years old today, or I guess as of last year and this year, these things are going to be flooding the market so quick. I am so excited to see these on the road a lot more. I'm really hoping we actually see less show cars because people have been doing that for years. People have been doing show and tell licenses, special showcase license where you can just bring it in, trailer it around. That's pretty much it. I want to see these on the road. I want to see them driven. I want to hear them. It's such a cool car. And I know that's not really going to happen because they're so expensive, but one can only hope. Right? So if you can't buy a Skyline, what's the next best thing? Nissan Stagea, the wagon Skyline. I've already seen a couple of builds on these guys. I actually know someone who's making one of these. Shout out to Kevin from Petrol Lounge. He's in the process of making his. So if you haven't checked him out, go look at his. Really, really cool build. Overall, the Stagea is a 4-door Skyline. You can easily swap the RB26 twin turbo in that thing. Put the manual in it. It is really, really freaking fast. Moving on, we've got the Integra Type R DC2. So this is focused on the ladder gears. I think it ran until 2001. So we had the Acura Integra, not the Honda version of it. Same thing. It's just a different badge, but we'll have a lot more access to them now. Again, really the main focus here. But you can have a right-hand drive one from Japan would be pretty cool. You got the 1.8 liter VTEC engine with about 200 horsepower. Really freaking cool car. They sound great. Always loved hearing James Pumphrey make the VTEC noise. Moving on to our final Japanese car, and that's going to be the Mitsubishi Evo 6. Ran from 99 to 01. Everyone loves the Evo. I think US didn't get an Evo till the 7th gen right after this. So finally getting to see these come over. 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder with the 276 acclaimed horsepower. They're all-wheel drive, active yaw control. Really freaking cool car. I'm not the biggest Japanese person, but going back to what I mentioned with just having more access to cars here, I knew someone who had an Evo 7 and he wanted an Evo 6, but again, because of the laws, he had to wait. So that's why he got an Evo 7. So, rounding out this list, I cannot exclude them. Our upside down Americans, our friends from down under, the Australians. Unfortunately, I can't remember the exact year, but as of very late 2010s, early 2020s, Holden, Ford Australia, and other Australian native automotive brands have discontinued all production. I don't remember the exact year. I'll post it here, but we have no more native or homegrown Australian car companies. And it's unfortunate. It's sad because a lot of heritage and a lot of history have come from not only that rivalry, but also just those brands. I mean, it's such a sad time to see where we're heading in the automotive industry and to be losing out on brands such as them quite early on in this transition period. It's pretty sad. So wanted to add these guys as a little bit of an homage, but also because they are freaking cool cars. And to start off, we're going to start with Holden, the Commodore, and I know there's 2 trims here, so I'm going to call it either the VT or the VX. Big old full-size sedan. I think it's about a 5 Series equivalent. If you're getting it with the SS trim, that's got the LS1 V8, the 5.7, about 300 horsepower. It's your drag car. Rear-wheel drive, manual, light. It's a freaking workhorse. And again, just what that car looks like, how it was designed. It's so early 2000s, and I absolutely love it. The last part is the HSV trims of a lot of these models. So I'm not going to name any in particular because they're all freaking cool. But HSV stood for the Holden Special Vehicles. A lot of them, like the GTS 300, had the tuned 5.7 liter V8. I think that one put out 400 horsepower. Just AMG-ifying it, doing its own thing. Absolutely, balls to the wall, no limitations. Body kit changes, suspension. I think a big brake kit in there. Obviously the engine and the exhaust. Just such a cool Australian alternative to SVT with Ford and just on their vehicles as well. And last, but certainly not least on my list here is the Ford Falcon, specifically the Ute, and I think this is called the AU generation from 99 to 2002. If you're not familiar with the Ute is just short for utility vehicle. As far as I'm aware, it's essentially a crew cab, a 2-seater with a truck bed in the back. So it takes a sedan version and turns it into a truck. You could get a freaking V8 in these things. To have a V8 with no weight in the back, I mean, you're just spinning and spinning. You could get these in inline 6s. I think this is the 4-liter inline 6. So if you want slightly more efficiency, maybe slightly more reliability as well, the inline 6 was probably pretty okay. But you could have rear-wheel drive, and then you had a big load tray in the back. So you could have a couple different versions of your car and then have a truck to help haul stuff around. So that rounds out my list for cars that turned 25 in 2025. Now I'd like to move on to our final segment, which is honorable mentions. This is kind of a cop-out, but these are going to be cars that turn 25 in the next 5 years, so by 2030. Going back to Europe, that's mostly what's on this list. I've got 6 extra cars here that I'm really looking forward to, and I'm actually going to start shopping these just to see where they are in terms of market value over these next few years. Starting off this list, it's going to be the continuation of the Volkswagen Phaeton. Unfortunately, we only had this for about 3 model years, 04 through 06. But the first generation actually ran through, I want to say 09 or 2010, and then they switched to generation 2. So the Phaeton, if you are unaware, is essentially an Audi A8. Not really, but I mean more than the sense of like what it stands for. It's the flagship sedan of Volkswagen. It was the brainchild of Ferdinand Piëch from Volkswagen before he had left. Absolutely over-engineered car like crazy. You could have a V6 in Europe. You could have a V8, which is what we got in the States, as well as the big boy, the 6-liter W12. 450 horsepower. I want to say about 400 pound-feet of torque. All-wheel drive, 155 mile an hour, champagne cooler, executive seating in the rear, TVs, you name it. It's just an absolutely fantastic car, very over-engineered, but also very rare. So I'm really excited to see some of those pop up here. So we just have more inventory here. That's really the problem we have here in the States. So I'm really excited to see some more Phaetons pop up. Up next, and this one is very, very close to me because it is going to be a new car, perchance, launched here in the next few weeks to a month, and that is the Audi C5 RS6 Avant. If you are not aware of this car, this was a time when Mercedes, BMW, and Audi were putting fairly large displacement, high cylinder count engines in their cars. Best example here is going to be the A60 M5. Audi had the A6 and S8 equivalent. I don't remember the exact European range, but in the petrols, basically 3 liters up to a 5.2 liter V10. And the crazy people over in the RS factory said, what if we slap 2 turbos on a V10? And that's how we got the RS6. And then they said, what if we put it in a wagon? So you can not only have a 5.2 liter V10 in a wagon, but it was also twin turbocharged. This is an absolutely freaking crazy car that we just do not see anymore. We're never going to see this again. I highly suggest you find the video from Auto Alex when they did the S6 Avant road trip. They were doing a fuel economy test. That's such a fun video. Again, that's the naturally aspirated version, but 450 horsepower. Who cares? It's such an insane car, and I cannot wait to see these come to the States. That is absolutely one of my top cars that I want to see get here, regardless of how it gets here. I want to hear that, because I may have something in that realm coming this way. Up next, I'm going to switch gears a little bit here to Britain, and that is Lotus. The Lotus Elise, one of the cars that kind of revamped Lotus in a way. Japan seeing the success of the Mazda, but the sort of British style roadster, Lotus said, hey, that's our thing, and we made it mid-engined. So they had the Lotus Elise launched in 99, I want to say 98 in Europe. So I don't think we ever got an Elise. I've never seen them. I can maybe think of a couple, but I really don't remember Elises coming to the States. I think like the second generation of it did, or the Evora was maybe the first Lotus. But in any case, those first few year Lotus Elises, I really want the tiny ones. Like the really, really tiny ones. They are so balanced, so loud, and just awesome looking cars. This was definitely one of my childhood cars growing up with Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2. I loved using the Roadster version of that in that game. So that's one that's definitely near and dear to my heart. With all good things, this must come to an end, so we will round out this list with 2 BMWs. So the first of our BMWs is the E81 hatchback. This is the 3 and the 5-door version. You can have either. It's technically the only way you can have a 4-door 1 Series, but hey, we've got it. And this car launched, I want to say, in 2004. It has aged very gracefully. I have actually been blessed to see one at my old dealership. There was one that was brought in from Mexico. It was a 130. It was automatic. It was the 3-door version, so just the 2-door with the hatch. Really awesome looking car. I absolutely loved it, and I can't wait to see these guys kind of pop up here a little bit more. And so we get to the last car. Our second BMW and last on this list is going to be the BMW E61 M5 wagon. We know it. We love it. The V10 from BMW is absolutely insane. S85 is one of the most glorious engines sounds that you can ever hear. But it's arguably one of BMW's, if not BMW's, least reliable engine. It's no M57, it's no N52, it's certainly not even an N54, and it's a naturally aspirated 5-liter V10, but it's a high revving one at that, so it's very similar to many S engines in the past, where it's just very, very high maintenance. V8 version, the S65 is just as bad, but they sound fantastic, and they're certainly from a long gone era of our big naturally aspirated engines, high cylinder counts, and it's really sad. It certainly is something to miss out on, but As these cars age, I hope they land in hands of enthusiasts that want to keep them alive, keep them well, bring them to the States, hopefully. So, I know that was a long list. I want to say thank you for a wonderful 2024. I cannot thank you guys enough for the support, the community we've built in this past couple of years. We're coming up on 2-year anniversary, but the latter half of 2024 is where we're starting to hit our stride. Focus on the content that we want to make and is intriguing and different to a lot of what people are doing out here today. So, again, thank you guys for staying till the end with me here. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It always helps out with the algorithm. As a final parting before we head off here, would love to know what is on your list. Is there anything that you're looking for in 2025 to actually import over? Out of curiosity, have you imported something before? Tell me about that process. Was it difficult? Was it expensive? Those are things that we need to know as I look into doing stuff like this. Is it something that's pretty feasible for the common person? Other than that, thanks again for staying till the end here. As always, I'm your host, Donovan. Thanks for watching Euro Fever Garage. And until next time, see you guys later.